Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Brand new week, brand new video, brand new content. And today I'm so excited because this is a paid partnership with AIDSmap Women. It's a video basically talking about women living with HIV in the times of COVID-19. It's a series of videos that have been doing with AIDSmap. They sponsored the first video that I did. In fact, they gave me my first very paid sponsored gig, and it was one of the best moments of my life as a YouTuber, especially now that YouTube has refused to pay me. Okay, that is just on a lighter note. But today, my friend Susan Cole from AIDSmap has actually given me this video for me to share, to amplify the message, and so that you guys can also get involved, get to know what the conversation is out there, and also just get to know much more of what is happening, especially in the times of COVID-19 and HIV. So please guys, watch this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And at the end of the video, do not forget to engage with me on the comment section. Thank you so much. And remember, this is a paid post, so can we be nice people and watch it, please? Okay? So bye-bye for today and see you next week.
Hello everyone, hello and welcome to AIDSmap Women, Taking Care of Your Health, a COVID-19 special for women living with HIV. This broadcast has been kindly sponsored by Gilead Sciences. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by an extraordinary panel of women today. I'd like to first of all introduce my first guest, Mercy Shibember.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Mercy. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. So for those of you who don't know Mercy, she's an award-winning activist who is passionate about ensuring the voices of children and young people living with HIV are part of the HIV response. She's co-chair of the women's HIV charity, the Sophia Forum, and currently working specifically on youth participation in clinical trials and research. Pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Mercy, I was having a look on the internet the other day and I saw you hugging Prince Harry. What's that all about?
Well, we've met a few times now, Susan. So, got to go beyond the handshake and just dive into a real hug. Obviously, not in COVID times, social distancing and all, but yes.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. I don't know what Meghan's going to think about that, but Harry and Meghan, if you're watching, do come on the show because we want to talk to you. So thank you. If I could have my next guest, Janine McGregor Reed. Hello, Janine. How are you doing?
Susan. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Janine has been living with HIV for the past 30 years. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And living well.
And living well, very important. Janine's a peer navigator and East London coordinator for Positively UK, based at the Homerton Hospital in East London. So, Janine, what have you been doing to stay calm over this time?
Well, my go-to is always my yoga. I have to say I'm very glad that, recently I was able to go on a yoga retreat with my daughter, which was wonderful to introduce her in that way, like, another country. We went to Italy. But normally I'm just at home doing my own little practice, or unfortunately I can't go to my classes anymore because of COVID. So I had to do my own thing. And I'm so grateful that I've had that background where I can, draw on the teachings I've had to do the practices that help me to stay well.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. Maybe you could show us some of your moves later.
Maybe another forum.
Okay, I'll just chat to you in a second. So if we can have our next guest, Rebecca Mbue. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Susan.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Fantastic. So Rebecca is a speaker, trainer and mentor living well with HIV for the past 23 years. She is presently working with Positively UK, coordinating the GROWS project, Growing Older, Wiser and Stronger, and is co-director of the 4M Mentor Mothers Network, working with a wide range of women living with HIV who you're going to be representing today.
Indeed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, I see that you've been drinking like a really weird green drink. Can you tell us what that is?
It's a mix of, I don't know, lots of green vegetables and juice. This is my cheat sheet when I don't drink water. I'm terrible, so this is what I use instead.
Well, it looks really healthy, a little bit like weird, but like really healthy. So
Yeah.
well done.
Tastes great though.
Fantastic. Speak to you in a sec. And finally, I would like to bring on Vanessa Appiah. Hi, Vanessa. You look like you're in a BBC studio.
I know, it's very deceptive, but no, very nice. It is our new seminar room, yeah.
Fantastic. So Vanessa is an HIV and sexual health consultant at Barts Hospital. Vanessa, so you were on the last AIDSmap Women, weren't you? You were indeed. And I remember you mentioning locking yourself away from your kids in your bathroom and lighting candles and watching Netflix. So
I revealed myself. Still doing
Have you been
that.
pampering? You're still doing that?
No, yes, yeah. I'm exhausting Netflix, but I have to say that that time alone and just to kind of that zen, calm down time has been one of the things that's gotten me through the last couple of months. So yes, good times.
Brilliant, excellent. That's great. Well, if I can bring on all of you lovely guests for the first question. A bit like the Brady Bunch now. We can all see each other. Hi. So, first of all, I'd like to pose a question to Rebecca. How has HIV, your OV care, been affected by this pandemic?
Thanks, Susan. Fortunately, I think because I'm in the bracket of the one of the patients that are living really well. So I only need to access my clinic like twice a year. So it doesn't feel like it's been affected quite terribly. I've had an online consultation, a telephone consultation with my consultant, and arranged to go and have my bloods taken. So I haven't been as worried as some of the other women I've spoken to.
What have some of the other women been? What are their concerns?
Just loads of anxiety around running out of treatment, for example. Just even appointments going to have your bloods taken. How will that happen? And lots of anxiety around that, really.
Mm. And Janine, as a patient rep in the hospital, what have you heard from the women that you've been working with about how they're feeling about virtual appointments?
I mean, I think some of them feel, worried that maybe some of the symptoms they have could be COVID. We talk through them because people haven't easily been able to access tests in the past. People worry if they've had COVID earlier. Have they got long COVID? And of course, people have had to keep going back and forth with their GPs to talk about these symptoms, and there's really not a lot else that can be done about that, because if it's in the past, they're definitely not living with COVID now. It's just a worry that people have, and then now we've got the flu season coming up, and people have asked me about having the flu jab and worried that maybe that could bring on symptoms. But definitely the advice I've had from my doctor, and I think all of our patients, would be to have the flu jab, because you wouldn't want to get COVID or not have had the flu jab and potentially be exposed to COVID. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've noticed that there's quite a worrying sort of thing going around on Facebook at the minute, some like really strange misinformation about the flu jab, and that it could be dangerous. I mean, Vanessa, what would you say to people who are worried about going and getting the flu jab?
So I would emphasize what Janine just said. So the flu itself is something that you don't want to have. Like, we were all talking about COVID, but having the flu makes you feel really rough. So if there's any way that you can prevent that, then you should definitely take that option. And we've got the flu vaccine there. And so I would encourage everyone to take the flu vaccine, protect themselves, and just look after themselves widely as well.
Okay, fantastic. And Mercy, you live in the north of England. What are you hearing about services outside of London?
Yeah, I think, people have that feeling that there already are disparities in terms of London compared to everywhere else. And I think COVID has really kind of exacerbated that and made that clear to people that actually there is. And reminding people that their access to services locally, isn't as great as perhaps if you did live in London. However, as a lot of things have adapted and become digital, it has enabled a lot of people to access things that they wouldn't have before. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really.
And I've heard about some women like struggling in terms of data poverty. Are you finding that some people are finding it difficult to access virtual appointments because they don't have the internet access, or they don't have credit on their phones? What are you hearing?
That is definitely a reality, and for those that there has been discussions within Positively UK about trying to help with those clients to access money, grants, to try and help out with that. But we do always have a service where we will call people and check up on them. So obviously, with the current situation, there is very little face-to-face work going on, and that's what those clients would have been used to. That would have been how they access service prior. And it's the same thing is happening in the clinic. It's obviously we call up from the clinic and check on patients, but the community support, which has gone so much more online, it is there is definitely some clients who are less able to interact with that.
Right. And what's happening in your clinic, Vanessa?
So yes, within our clinic, so really early on we had to move to virtual. So we've got a mixture of telephone consultations and online. And over time, we've gradually brought in some face-to-face services that are needed. So meaning bloods, and also, like I've mentioned before, there are some people that are disengaged with care and now have re-engaged, and we've been supporting them within clinic and seeing them face-to-face. But the majority of our clinic is virtual. And I've got to completely agree with all of you, what you've just said. So we know that we are looking after the majority, but there's still a minority there that we know that are having difficulty either picking up the phone and having privacy to speak, having the credit, so you may speak to them for a couple of minutes and then it cuts, and even getting back hold of them is difficult. For them to kind of negotiate online in terms of finding out other information, because we've been using Twitter and other forms, again, which is great for many people. But for many people, they either don't have a Twitter account, or even having continued access online is difficult. So I think we're really aware that we're getting better at supporting people, but there's still a gap that we need to bridge. Yeah, definitely.
And what do you reckon, Mercy?
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say that something that I've been hearing amongst young people is it's not necessarily just the problem of having access to data, but actually having access to a private space where you can have that. A lot of young people will live with housemates, flatmates, and all of that. And actually finding a space to be able to access care and talk freely and openly has been a real challenge for a lot of people.
Right, yeah. Thank you for flagging that. That's a really important point. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the experiences of young women, young people living with HIV during this COVID era. I mean, we're seeing all these things on the news at the minute about young people having like parties and stuff like that, and being scapegoated quite a lot. But how are young people living with HIV feeling about COVID in your experience?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, we've had lived experience that a virus can be a really isolating and difficult thing. And so it really kind of annoys me to see that rhetoric. But, many young women I spoke to, particularly at the beginning, we all had all of these questions about what does this mean and what does this mean, particularly for us. I remember my employer being like, should we have you in the office? Should we not? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like 21 and this there's a pandemic. I don't know what to do. When, a lot of the women I've spoken to are also Black, which also carries that increased risk. And particularly around the economic impact that's happened to young people. A lot of young people have been in industries where there's been, a massive impact on them and have lost jobs that they needed to be able to support them through studying or just life, or perhaps a parent in the household has lost their job, so they've needed to get a job and, are then feeling at risk. And as well, mental health has just been a massive concern. So, obviously the news and the media has all of that going on, but it's been a really concerning time for a lot of young people that I've spoken to.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Vanessa, if I could just pick up on what Mercy was saying. I mean, Black women seem to be at greater risk from COVID. Why is that? And do you think it's to do with the broader health inequalities that we face?
Definitely. I think that there are, when you look at the increased risk, so there are many features that come into play. So we were told that older people were increased risk. We were told that men were increased risk. We then found out that ethnicity was a key driver in that. And then we also saw that people that had other comorbidities, such as heart disease, etc., and kidney disease, were also at increased risk. So we had all those factors that were coming into play. And then when we looked at particularly the increased risk in Black communities, we saw that men and women had an increased risk. And when you look at particularly for Black women, I think when we look at ethnicity, my mantra is always, ethnicity is a social construct. It's not biological. And so when you look at ethnicity, you try and understand why you see differences between different communities, you have to look at the social context in which people are living. And we can't get away from the fact that being Black and living in the UK, inherently, we've already got a lot of health inequalities, and that is driven by significant structural inequalities that are at play in our daily life. And it's interesting when we talk about the differences as Black people, and we weren't surprised when we saw this. It wasn't like suddenly we were like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? No, we were like, yes, you're just showing what we've known all the time, and hallelujah, someone's listening, and that's how we felt about it. But I do think the social context, socioeconomic status, where we live, the whole issue of multi-generational households, and there's a number of layers involved in it. And particularly as we're more likely to be in key worker roles or 0 hours contracts, so which require face-to-face interaction, which, because of our financial situation, we weren't able to, leave those jobs, and so we had to be there. So there are many reasons why I think we are at increased risk.
Yeah, and thank you. And Rebecca, what impact is the awareness of this increased risk having on Black women living with HIV?
Naturally, it's going to have not just on Black women. If anyone heard that, we're at greater risk, that there's increased anxiety, around where shall we go? Should I shield? What happens to me as a Black woman living with HIV or a Black man living with HIV? What is it I need to do? Is there treatment? How will I respond to the flu jab? So yeah, definitely, an increased level of anxiety. Yeah.
And do you think the misinformation that's being shared on social media is making people's anxiety worse?
Of course it is. The challenge is, by nature, we as human beings, we're a curious and we suck in all sorts of information, and with social media and just media in general, it's very difficult to decipher what's actually true and what isn't. So that just again hypes up the anxiety, because you're thinking, oh, is that true? And then you have all of these social medias, Twitter and WhatsApp exchanges and little video clips about what conspiracy theory, and it just goes on and on and on. If you're like me, I just turn off the news and I've had enough. But by nature, as human beings, we just think, what was that I heard? And you're back again, and it just sucks you in. So clearly your anxiety levels are going to go through the roof. It's it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all to have all of this, running around and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard today, I spoke to someone who their anxiety is getting so much worse because they're struggling to see their GP. Is that something that people are experiencing in terms of just trouble accessing care beyond your HIV care? Janine, have you heard about that from the women that you're working with?
I think there is this issue of, when you go to the GP, like single issue, like that's not how you experience your life. Your life is a whole thing. And if you're living, with housing problems and, struggling to feed your kids, all of these things, or immigration, all the things that I see on a daily basis, often, for the same person. So, but when you go, and if you've got a specific pain, that's all they want to talk about. And it's really problematic, I think, the way people are feeling that they either have to make numerous trips to really get to the core of, to get a GP to really understand their true nature of their problems.
Yeah,
because the biological and the social, as the doctor was saying, they're interlinked.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really important point that you're making, and it's something that women with HIV have been experiencing, way before the COVID pandemic, and the pandemic seems to be making it worse in terms of getting appointments and being seen. I mean, but you mentioned about all these stresses that women face in terms of like looking after their kids, and issues around poverty, issues around immigration. And someone, I was at a conference yesterday, and someone highlighted the fact that women with HIV are so busy juggling so many things that they're not making time to look after themselves. Is that something that you're hearing about or experiencing yourselves?
Absolutely. It's something that I'm always talking to the women that I see about, trying to prioritize themselves. I mean, many of the women work, and they are so many of the women who are working are saying how important their job is to them, that is helping them to feel, you know, sane in this time where everything is shifting. It's like that routine helps them maybe say, okay, I'm taking the kids to school, then I'm getting to work when I come home, and you know, it helps to have structure to your day. So, you know, the threat that's hanging over people's jobs, all of these things, I think a big, you know, thing for people is to, when you have that portion of time that could be free, how are you going to use it? Are you going to spend it watching the news and getting more anxious, or are you able to sort of plan that this time is mine and I'm going to do something really nice and, you know, caring for myself? Eat, you know, cook something good, or, you know, just chill in a way, have a nice bath, whatever.
Yeah, like Vanessa.
Yeah.
You know,
Talk yourself away.
and it's really something I think you have to think about. You know, when your life is very full, you really have to kind of sometimes set goals around how you're going to use these moments which come up for you as free time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we do just seem to forget about self-care. And another issue that's coming up a lot is particularly for older women living with HIV. So Mercy, I think you don't have to worry about not an issue, but I know the Sophia Forum is doing a lot of really fantastic work for older women living with HIV. But a concern that I'm hearing is that women with HIV, older women, seem to have quite a lot of comorbidities and are struggling currently with accessing care for other specialities. Is that something that you've been hearing about?
I mean,
Shall I?
Yeah, you go on, Rebecca. Yeah.
I was just going to speak from the perspective of a woman aging or growing older with HIV, but and you know, the conversations that take place. I mean, yeah, there will be lots of factors as you grow older. You know, osteoporosis. Is it because of the HIV, or is it because of growing older? I think generally it is twofold. So we're so used to being seen by our consultant, and we've got a history of trying to change that over and get used to being seen by our GPs, and that in itself is a challenge. And I think with COVID now thrown into the mix, that's even become more challenging, because, well, you can't come to the clinic, to the GP, because, you know, you've got to keep yourself isolated. And again, that just compounds the anxiety. You know, so it's trying to tease out these things. I was speaking to someone just very quickly, an example, who then said, I've been going to my GP for an issue that she's been having, you know, either whether it's chest, and they've done every test under the sun. And she keeps insisting, can you have a look at my sinuses? Can you have a look at my sinuses? And it's only until she went back to the HIV consultant was that sort of fast tracked into, can we have that done? So again, I remember saying to her, this is what causes the difficulty, or you know, for us women wanting to go to the GPs, because you feel you're not being heard, you're not, you know, that kind of thing. And then we just end up going back to our consultant really frustrated. And when they respond in the way that we expect, by default, you're going to go back again when you next have the issue. So there are lots of additional stuff that women have to deal with. It's about improving the lines of communication so that there isn't any of this ping-ponging to and fro, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And Mercy, in terms of young women who are moving perhaps from pediatric care into adult care, what are those challenges?
Yeah, it's been Yeah, really difficult actually. I transferred pretty late, so I was kind of just getting used to, going to a hospital that I've never been to with my parents, and going for myself and figuring out which corridor leads to where. And I felt like I was just building my relationship with my consultant and getting to grips with everything. And then this pandemic comes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what my care is going to look like. And we've just been talking about referring me for my first smear test, and that got moved. And so there's been a lot of moving pieces to get used to, and it's been, quite difficult. And, growing up, I went to see my consultant every 3 months. So it's like, it's a shift anyway to kind of go to every 6 months, and then actually be in a pandemic and think, I'm not quite sure when I'll be able to have face-to-face delivery again. And that has been a real challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you highlighted about smear tests. How are people feeling about, missing out on things like smear tests and mammograms? I know people with diabetes have been really concerned about missing out on blood tests. And Vanessa, what would you recommend for people who are concerned that, then we're not getting the tests that we should be getting at this time?
No, definitely. I think that there are a number of processes within the hospitals to keep an eye, like a register of those. So those that are supposed to have a smear test at a certain time and they haven't been able to have them, there are what we call fail-safe lists. But what I encourage everyone to do is to keep your own register of the things that you were due to have and you haven't yet had, so that you can, if you don't hear from someone in 3 or 6 months, that you go and personally say, right, I haven't had this done and I need to have this done. Please make sure that I haven't slipped off the list. So I've been encouraging people, I've been reassuring people, should I say, that there are systems in place in the hospital to make sure that people aren't missed. But those things can happen. So to make sure that you advocate for yourself as well and keep a record, and then also communicate with the hospital, clinic, etc. if you haven't heard it at regular intervals, like say 3 or 6 months. I don't think we can get away from the fact that it is really anxiety provoking when you're kind of, right, now I'm supposed to have my smear, supposed to have my mammogram, and it's pushed back, and then you're saying, how can, is it safe for it to be pushed back? What if something's missed? And if you're at home just thinking about it, the worry just increases and increases. So I would say to people, keep a list and make sure you keep engaged with your clinics. But we are in the hospitals working on the backlogs to kind of get everyone through the system.
Fantastic. I mean, and you mentioned about anxiety. Are people feeling that anxiety levels are just getting higher and higher for people at the minute? What would you recommend, Vanessa? I mean, there doesn't really seem to be a lot of support in relation to mental health available at the minute.
Yeah, I know, yeah, definitely. And I think that also to the organisations that are providing mental health, they're fantastic. But the other thing is that there just isn't enough because, again, in COVID, never have we had a time where it seems that so many people experiencing so much anxiety all at the same time about a common thing as well. For anxiety, for me, one of the biggest things is I always say to people just to understand that it's understandable that you're feeling anxious and not to beat yourself up about it. A lot of people I speak to, and particularly women, because that whole kind of gender norm of what the women's role in life of juggling, I always talk about this juggling thing, but it's the juggling that's happening every day. COVID is just a bigger ball that's come into it, but it's constantly juggling, constantly trying to manage everything, and also putting the pressure on themselves to manage it well as well, which is another big factor. So I say it's completely understandable to be anxious, but I always encourage people in terms of speaking out about it and speaking to your doctor. We've talked about sometimes the difficulty that some people may have with their GPs, but accessing your GP if you do have a good relationship, accessing clinic and being proactive in contacting clinic and saying, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time. Please, can you help support me? Other personal things, as Janine was saying, in terms of being kind to yourself and doing things that, taking that 10 minutes out of the day to breathe and to think about what you need and you want. Being active, we talk about exercise, but I think it's not even just exercise, it's just getting out. And whether it's around the space of where you live, even being mobile within your house as well, that movement is just really important, because we all know, even us as doctors, we used to be running up and down, and in COVID, sometimes there was a time where you're just sitting at your desk. And I don't know about anyone else, but I've seen the change in my body shape over COVID. And so it is about having that exercise, and also just thinking more about eating well, because eating well, being mobile and having your space is all about being kind to yourself, and that also helps with your anxiety. And the last thing I would say about everyone is sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep deprivation is not pretty. And sometimes people in COVID were saying, gosh, all I was doing was sleeping because I was being at home more. But then anxiety kicks in, and then people can't sleep during the night. So it is about thinking about that whole sleep hygiene thing. And if it is having a bath before, the old wives' tale of like having milk, or, just having that quietness before you go to bed, so that you're more likely to have a better night's sleep.
Thank you. And what else are people doing in terms of looking after their emotional well-being?
I got to attend a really cool workshop with older women living with HIV in Manchester. So I think it was about 12 weeks long, and we would meet every Saturday, do a different activity and just talk. And honestly, we didn't have to talk about COVID or HIV or anything, but just to have that space and know that actually we're all probably sharing the same anxieties, but we just get to paint and just chill for 2 hours. That was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
Very similar to Mercy. We've got what I refer to as a sort of external peer support group. Every Saturday, like clockwork, at 5 o'clock, whether it's with a glass of wine or there's a Zoom call. And out of that, we've actually developed a book sort of club. Each person picks a book, you read it for a month, and then you review it. And it's been going on for quite a while now, and it's great. It's the one thing that we look forward to. A bit of a girly gossip, Netflix recommendations, a whole series of stuff. Yeah, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it does a lot for your mental state of mind. It really does.
Brilliant. And Janine, obviously yoga. Is there anything else that you're doing for your emotional well-being?
Going back to Helios, because as the doctor was saying, I was having problems with my sleep, and I'm having acupuncture, and it's really done the world of good for me. And I have to also just give a big shout out to my colleagues at Positive UK who are running the women's online group and the mixed social. Yeah. They've been going really well, and as Mercy was saying, those chats that they have, which between the two groups is like one a week, that people can tune into and really just follow a theme, but it's loose enough that I'm sure if anybody had something particular on their mind, they could share it in a really supportive environment. So as much as COVID has disrupted us really a lot, it's all this meeting online has for many people been I think a new draw into being involved in the HIV community. We're seeing people turn up who weren't turning up to the face-to-face groups. So we win and we lose with everything, I think.
Fantastic. We're about to run out of time, so I thought we could just have a quick fire round of one thing that you would recommend that someone can do to look after their health as we move forward through these strange times. Well, let's go around, starting with you, Vanessa.
Oh, no. So many. One thing, quiet. So just creating some quiet in any way that you can, and if it's just having some space to go for a walk, or if it's being in the corner of the room and just having a book that you want to read and think, right, that's it, or if it's, you know, just before you're going to sit and watch Netflix, just having that time to do it, but just create that time of quiet for yourself so that you can just take stock of things and then think about how to look after yourself after that. That's just one thing.
Brilliant. Rebecca?
God, this is, I mean, that is precisely what Vanessa says. Take some time out and be very conscious of the fact that this is my time. You know, a very good tip that a friend of mine has, she has a traffic light system on her door. If it's red, it means do not come in, even if it's for 10 minutes or half an hour. And then, you know, if it's green, yeah, you can come in. It's all cool now. So, yeah, that would work. You know, that's a really good tip.
Great. Mercy?
Yeah, I just love going on a walk, putting my headphones in, throwing some gospel music on, and I'm off and just in my own space.
Fantastic. And finally, Janine.
I mean, whatever floats your boat. What makes you feel alive and inspired? Like, you know, I'm a great believer of it in a dance in the kitchen. You know, with some music, by cooking.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
out to yoga as well, of course.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you all so much for coming on the show. It's been incredible hearing your really important insights. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'd like to thank Gilead Sciences for sponsoring this show. I'd like to thank Disruptive Life for their technical wizardry and making all of this happen. I'd like to thank all of the women living with HIV who have spoken to me and shared their insights and their concerns, who really made this possible. So thank you all so much, and we will see you soon for part 3 of AIDSmap Women. Thank you. Bye.